All right, welcome guys. Welcome to you guys are continuing to join us here, and hope you are all having a great day. And I am excited always for Monday nights because it's fun to be able to share information that we know is relevant and information that people need to know about. And I feel like this kind of stuff is just not shared anywhere else. So we are thankful that you took the time out of your night to come join us. And remember, every Monday night we try to bring to you a different topic of relevance, and we're always open for suggestions. So, myself and our team, we always want to be able to offer you guys just, tips and ideas and strategies for how we can improve our health in our life. So you guys that don't know me, I'm Amanda Villarreal. So I have been in the health and wellness industry for a very long time. And we all know a lot of times the basics of, I think, yes, we should exercise. Yes, we should eat well. But how many of us really truly know information about things like sugar? We all know it's bad, but do we really know details about it, such as what does it do to our body? Where is it hidden? What types of foods is it found in? And what's good and what's bad? So good to see some new faces on here tonight, guys. Welcome. So as we walk through this, guys, like I said, if you think of some questions, feel free to, unmute yourself. But this is only going to be about 20 minutes. We do not make these very long. Every Monday night, we try to stick to that same time frame. But what I want to start out with here first is just saying to you guys that no matter what, where you are beginning, we all need to know that it is never too late to start to change what our habits are and to start to look at the options of building long-term health. And it's exciting to know that our bodies are amazing and they continue to regenerate new cells. And it's interesting, if you've ever heard you are what you eat, there is some truth to that, because literally your food becomes you. So it's important that we start to just begin to learn, that the choices we're making are going to affect us long-term. So great way to start out here. So again, if some of you are hopping on here thinking, man, my diet is terrible, I really don't need to know how bad it is. Please note that we are all starting somewhere and we want to meet you wherever you're at. And to begin here, as we're looking at some of the things that sugar does to our bodies and some of the harmful effects, I think it's very interesting. A lot of times when people hear of sugar, we think automatically of, diabetes, or it's in things like pop, and some of those types of, candy and processed foods. But there is so much that sugar actually does to our bodies in a harmful way. So when we look at, one of the very first things that's interesting is it's similar to how caffeine acts in our body, that when we intake it, we generally do that because we are, feeling like we need a little pick-me-up, but then it causes you to crash, and we continue to get that up and down effect. And so we want more. And it becomes to the fact of where, as we continue to, get to the place where we can never get enough, it actually then turns our body to even feeling as though it's hungry. So sugar plays a direct correlation, and also what goes on with our chemical balances in our brain. So that's why they actually say, and at the very last slide, I have a picture to show you this, but sugar can actually act the same way as cocaine does to our brain. And it's addictive. And those properties of that, we don't realize it can affect our mood. It can affect our emotional health. It can definitely make you maybe not very nice to people around you, that sometimes it can completely change personalities. And no one talks about this as, these type of effects that can come from everyday foods that we are eating. So some of the issues, yes, we probably know that it can help cause us to gain weight, the facts that it breaks down tissues in your body. And one of the big things we'll also talk about here is inflammation and what it does to our body. And there are several of you on here that I know have really had some transformations with getting inflammation out of your body. And sugar is one of the leading causes of why we hold on to inflammation. And if you also look at, so many people say, I don't want to spend money on health because I can't afford it. But I can honestly say more and more, I hope we are realizing that we can't not afford to spend money on health. And what we are investing in ourselves now is going to come into place of what happens here later. And just looking at some of the long-term effects of this, like I was saying, we know sugar leads to heart disease. We know it leads to cancer. We know it leads to diabetes. And those, for some of us, are not always necessarily maybe scary enough until it happens to us to actually get us to be realizing, all of these things that sugar is hidden in, many of us are intaking every single day. And it's scary. This is just one list. This is, if any of you are wanting to participate this week, we are doing a 5-day sugar challenge on Facebook in part of our Reset Your Routine Facebook group. But it is hidden in so many foods. I know one person just commented today how she went to buy club crackers and she noticed sugar was listed. You know, why do we need to have sugar in our crackers, in our peanut butter, in, you know, I mean, yes, a lot of us know, yeah, if you're going to eat a bowl of Fruit Loops, yes, it's probably going to be high sugar, right? A lot of the cereals it's added. But look at all of these names of things that I had never even heard of Pinocha before. Like, that's a form of sugar. I think, you know, most of us, we probably know, okay, there's white sugar, brown sugar, there's molasses, there's stevia, you know, the common names of them. But then we can even get into artificial sugars. So I think it's safe to say that just like when you're reading any food label, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. That is the most basic rule that you can go to when you are looking at a label. And very, very simple, that a lot of those artificial sugars are going to be very complicated names. So that's definitely a sign that you don't want to be intaking those types of foods. So let's look at, just to choose, you know, 3 primary dangers of a high sugar diet. And one of them is going to be talking about what types of deficiencies it creates. And this is just one, but B vitamin deficiencies are very common in people that have a high sugar diet. And when you look at what B vitamins do, B vitamins are known as your stress vitamins. They're your happy vitamins. And if we don't have enough of those, you're going to notice energy way down. You're going to notice stress hit you much harder. You might not sleep as well. So there's a correlation, like we were saying at the very beginning, what we eat and what happens to our long-term health. And when we start to notice these things happening, we're not sleeping well, suddenly we're eating more, suddenly we're gaining more weight. See, it's a cycle, right? And that's why we have to try to figure out how we can start to make some changes to break that cycle. And even our digestive health. That is one thing that we see all over the place right now, is the talk about gut health. And sugar basically creates more bad bacteria. And as that bad bacteria continues to take over the good bacteria, we're going to notice our immune system starts to become down. We notice we start to hold on to more inflammation. We notice we create a lot more mucus. We notice that our digestive system is disrupted, so it's not working as well. So sugar and digestive health, and we talked about an immunity there very quickly, but you know, sugar, as soon as we eat it, sugar is very fast absorbed. So that's why people like it, because it's a quick pick-me-up, like we were saying. But as we continue to consume too much sugar, if you look at the consequences of this, nobody I would ever say has ever said to me, I'm losing hair because I think I ate too much sugar. You know, a lot of times we don't correlate the symptom with what is happening with the foods that we're intaking. So just, some of the things to mention here, and highlighting maybe some of those areas that you may not have known of before. And just a quick note here too, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the movie Fed Up, but that is a great documentary that talks a lot about sugar. And it is pretty interesting in how, if you look at the sugar industry and how sugar is still allowed, basically the sugar industry paid to have that little tiny spot on our food guide pyramid, the old one, that allowed just a small amount of sugar. They knew way back when that sugar is basically doing no good in our bodies and it shouldn't even be allowed. But again, money is what allowed that to be considered part of our food guide pyramid way back when. So I encourage you, if you want to learn more, check out that movie. But here's just some, we were talking about, I mentioned crackers a little bit ago, but yogurt is another one. I'm always amazed. If you go to the store and you look at a thing of yogurt, it either has artificial sugar in it or it has as much sugar as a candy bar in it. So generally, if you're looking at, your labels, I always say you don't want to consume anything with more than about 10 grams of sugar. And that's just a rough, estimate. If some of you guys maybe heard, I did a live, video a couple days ago, and I just mentioned, even in a tablespoon of ketchup, generally there is 1 teaspoon of sugar, as an example of how heavy laden many of our foods are that we would never think of being high in sugar are. And that is very scary when you look at the amount of sugar that is now consumed in our diet. They say the average American diet is almost 25%. That's a high number, guys. Out of 100%, 25% of our diet daily is coming from sugar. And again, that's just staggering to me. And to note that we really have got to figure out ways to reduce our sugar, but also looking at, when people get rid of sugar, they go through withdrawal symptoms. That is crazy. That's, we only think of that if we're, trying to get off from something that's very addictive. People would never think of sugar as one of those things. So if you're starting to cut sugar and you're joining us in our sugarless challenge this week, don't be surprised if you get some headaches, you get some, jitteriness. You might need to, drink some more water, hydrate a little bit extra. But I definitely believe that sugar is one of the key things we're seeing in why our health is declining today. So if you look at these numbers, guys, again, I think this is scary. And I know most of us, we're so focused on just, COVID, obviously, right now, and all the things going on with our immune system. But look at this: 1 in 10 with diabetes, 1 in 10 on antidepressants, 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer, 1 in 2 men. The US spends more than any country on the health and our disease system. We do not focus on trying to prevent illness. And that is what really needs to change. That instead of, there was a big, an area that Shackley, that we'll get into talking about that a little bit here in a second, but the whole focus from changing our system from sick care to well care, that should be our focus. We shouldn't wait till people are sick to take care of them. We should be working on that prevention piece first. And I honestly believe that dietary changes are one of the biggest ways that we can help make a difference in our healthcare system. So just a quick example of what happens when we start to get some deficiencies in our diet. And if you can't see on the screen here very well, I apologize if it's a little blurry here, but when we have deficiencies, it shows up in the symptoms. And that's how we were talking about, for example, if we're eating too much sugar, we might start to notice our B vitamins are starting to become depleted. And as we develop those deficiencies, we tend to then have symptoms. And as those symptoms arise, instead of being recommended to increase certain nutrients, we are then told to take a medication, which, what does that do? It masks the symptoms generally, correct? So we need to be figuring out what are the things we can do to help to create overall nutrition and not just trying to get those quick fixes. So, just to be noted here, guys, so much of this can really be done by reversing a lot of what we shouldn't be eating. And inflammation, basically they're saying today, is one of the key indicators in many of the things we see today. Any of your itises, your arthritis, your bursitis, rheumatoid arthritis is very common now. And sugar is one of the biggest ways to increase inflammation in our body, along with red meat, wheat, also looking at dairy. So we really just want to get back to what we all should be focusing on, and that is getting more of real foods into our diet. And when we look at sugar, just, it's kind of interesting that actually refined sugar has zero nutrition to it. So we do not need to have sugar in our diet. And I know a lot of you might be wondering, well, what is like the whole point of, people say, oh, honey is good for me, or maple syrup. And yes, there are different types of sugars that have a little bit of nutritional value to them. But when we look at sugar cane and how it's actually processed, it's actually drained. And when it's drained, they take the liquid off from that and they boil that. So what is left are the crystals. And those have zero nutrients to them. There's a little bit of molasses left in with that, but the molasses also does not have just a very minimal amount of nutrients left. So really it's a voided nutrient. It's not even considered a food. It really is not something our body needs. But then we look at, brown sugar has a little bit of molasses added, and that's why there's a little bit of, they'll say it's better for you than white sugar, but it's all processed the same. Molasses does have a lot of nutrients to it, but again, you had to add the sugar to make it taste somewhat what anybody would want. So when you think of like molasses cookies, they're not just using molasses. There's definitely sugar added to that to help give it that taste. Stevia is more of a natural form because it does come from a plant, but that also has to do with how it's processed. And for diabetics, for example, stevia is definitely a more plant-based option for a sweetener. So it's going to be preferred definitely over using some of the other options out there. And people with hypoglycemia, same thing. You want to be using things that keep our blood sugar more stable, because we want to be avoiding what you can see in the picture of basically causing high amounts of stimulants to be going to our brain and high amounts of inflammation to be going through our body by increasing our sugar intake. Now, honey, if we can get unpasteurized, and generally if we can find it, closer to your home, the better. It has more nutrients to it, and they say that it actually helps with helping to create more immunity if you can buy honey closer to home. So if you're going to use a sweetener, generally, yes, we do say honey. And maple syrup also is a form of sugar that does have B vitamins. It does have some iron in it. So The trick is, though, people tend to go and buy things like Aunt Jemima. That is not syrup. So we need to read our labels and know exactly what is in there. We actually want to find pure, high quality, real maple syrup, and that would be a much better choice. But you have to note that any sugar, when it is ingested, is going to act the same way in our body. So we want to try to keep our best of a low glycemic focus inside our bodies, and again, avoiding this reaction of what a drug would do to our body, basically, same as sugar. So when we look at that, we try to find options that we can use that help to build health. And that is why we always like to promote health building strategies of, yes, we can continue to work on our diet, but unfortunately, our foods today are by no means as nutrient rich and dense as they were many years ago. And this is where we find a lot of times we need some options for natural alternatives. So I know many of us, if we are trying to truly get rid of sugar out of our diet, there's a few of you out here right now that are actually doing this 7-day cleanse right now. So I'm impressed you guys are still awake. Good job, Clark. Good work. There'll be a few more here too. I can't see all the names on here, but you know, when we go through a cleanse, that really does help to get our bodies back to where we don't have the cravings. And it's really tough, you know, going through those 7 days, but it is just amazing of how our bodies over time just become adapted to certain habits. And we really do not realize that those habits are a lot of what we're seeing today with our long-term health problems. So the cleanse, basically a jump start. If you're trying to get rid of sugar out of your diet, we always highly recommend checking out our 7-day cleanse. Now there's also, we were talking about B vitamins, and B vitamins are also something, if you know that you struggle with sugar and you tend to get, you know, even hypoglycemic type effects now and then if you're not eating regularly, B complex is a great option to making sure that you are keeping a little bit more stability in maintaining your even amount, especially your B12. That's a big one for energy. So B complex is a great one to know about. And especially if some of you have had high sugar diets, and I know none of us are perfect. And this is probably my weakest area too, is definitely sugar. And your tendencies and your cravings are, you know, some of those things are, I believe, 100%, you know, doing nutrition consulting with people for so long, you'll see patterns and you'll see habits. So those things we can't say necessarily we're going to get rid of every craving. We're never going to have it again. But we want to know strategies of how we can not have that have a long-term effect on us. So having B complex, you'll notice if the cravings are less, instead of, you know, maybe eating the whole container of ice cream, you can get away with a bowl and you're happy, right? And it's all moderation, we say. You know, we're not going to tell you never have sugar again. If you can do that, great. But we also want to just look at strategies for getting it in appropriate amounts. Another great thing is to have options for, again, quick meals, because when we tend to skip meals, we create that up and down effect that really does make us want to have more sugar in our diets. So having quick meal replacements like a Life Shake, which is a great building block for getting enough protein and having those low glycemic effects happen for, you know, several hours. Building with good vitamins, obviously. And the last one I just want to mention here really quickly is glucose regulation complex, because this is something that when a lot of people are struggling, especially type 2 diabetics. Now type 1, they don't have a choice. You know, that is something that is genetic. They, you know, their insulin basically is not being used how it's supposed to be throughout their bodies. But this glucose regulation complex, it has chromium, vanadium in there, some of the things that really help with regulating blood sugar levels. So if you are a person that you know your insulin levels tend to fluctuate and you are maybe borderline type 2 and you've had some hypoglycemic issues, this is an amazing product to know about. So even if you know someone else is starting to struggle, you know, if we can take care of things naturally, that is our goal, is to help give building blocks so people know what they can do to be safe and to prevent that obviously from turning into lifelong, you know, issues later down the road. So, all right, guys, this is again a little bit blurry here. I apologize, but we want to encourage you guys that if you think you don't have time for healthy eating right now, we promise that you're going to have to find a time for illness later. So this is the perfect way to end, because we really want you to thinking about, you know, how can you start to reduce some of those things in your diet that have snuck in over time. So, all right, I know we're out of time because 20 minutes is about our limit here. So any questions, guys, or anything you'd like to add, or maybe something we missed, feel free to unmute yourself if this was helpful. We'd love to hear from you here really fast. So go ahead if you could find your mute button. Unmute, I should say. You guys are just all so excited to go clean out your cupboards and get rid of sugar, I guess, huh?
Hey, Amanda.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly if you can go, like how sugar suppresses the immune system,
For
like
sure.
what's happening that causes that?
Yep, definitely. So, and again, the shortest way to basically, summarize that, when you eat sugar, and we we're talking about how, like I said before, it continues to eat away at that good bacteria. 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So if you continue to fill your gut more with the bad, that's going to suppress your immune system, which also plays a part even with your mental health. So the more bad bacteria you have, it's amazing how those toxins can actually go up into your brain. And it's interesting, they've even found that almost 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut. So we talk about that connection, how it plays into your immune health, that the more that we continue to build up the bad, basically it's going to decrease the good. So you're going to notice a direct correlation with getting sick more often. You notice when somebody is always catching every cold, every flu, generally it's because their gut health is not in check. So, we even have had people with things like ear infections and pink eye. I'll even say kids, we've done this with our kids, that if we can get them right away using a good quality probiotic, we can generally stop that, because then infection continues to build. And if we can then build up that gut health, it will suppress those symptoms from continuing to get worse and deplete your immune system. Does that help, Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Good. Any more questions, guys? Comments? Guys all look so excited. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that was helpful. If you think of something, obviously reach out anytime. And again, our goal is to bring you guys topics that are relevant. So if you guys have some suggestions, please let us know. Every Monday night, same link. We'll hope to see you guys back next week. You guys that want to hang out for some of our Shackley business training, you are welcome to stick around. So thanks, guys. Good to see you guys. Have a great night, everyone. See ya.